were students at Columbia, and they had finagled a deal with the bar owner to live upstairs for rent while doing repairs on the building. By the way, their rent was $100 a month.
Nice.
I salivate every time I was reading that.
Yeah, but they were also doing repairs and stuff, so
So am I.
Yeah, well...
I rebuilt my bathroom and my room.
But you're just a woman, Whitney.
Oh my gosh, I'm done.
But that's not actually how I feel. That was
no, I know.
That was sarcasm in case other people could not clue in on that. I'm a feminist.
There was a bright neon sign that said bar outside that supposedly had been there from the 30s or 40s. Mm-hmm. Apparently, Heyman had also become a publisher of a music magazine that he called The Ear, which may, I guess, give a little bit towards why it eventually got the name, but the way they got the name was super fun.
Okay.
It makes me so happy. They found a number of items in the basement that they've given to the New York Historical Society.
Oh, nifty.
Hand-blown jugs and champagne bottles.
Oh.
I know. That just reads you all over.
You know I do like a good champagne break.
I know, right? The area kind of started to die.
Okay.
More places had better trade routes and more accessibilities on newer piers. Okay. And it just kind of became random, let's say, shitty housing.
Oh, no.
And a lot of condemned buildings. Like I said, this particular building was condemned a few different times.
Was it like one of those things where, you huff and you puff and you blow and you knock the whole thing over? It was just, falling apart, or what?
It's made of brick, but, you've been to the blacksmith shop,
oh,
they reinforce that pretty heartily.
Yeah. Okay, well that gives me a really good mental image.
Yeah. While Rip was living there, he had a number of roommates. He lived with Paco Underhill and the artist, Deans. Apparently, Deans had acquired the building and had started to restore the interior before Rip had actually gotten his hands on it.
Okay.
Sari had sold one of Rosenberg's paintings in order to be able to afford part of it. And then Rip and Martin had put up the other part of it. A lot of the building is still reminiscent of the times prior to when they bought it in the 70s. It still has wooden posts and the beams set with the pegs. The doors and windows are late 19th century. There's no longer an outhouse in the back. Duh. And the second story and the third story still exist.
Okay.
For a very tiny amount of time, I found and I went looking like crazy town because I was like, we're renting this. I don't care if we were driving. I don't care how we're getting in there. We're renting it for sure. They had it listed on Airbnb, and before that they were renting the rooms out to people. I cannot find any sort of rental to it because now I guess it's storage.
That's really too bad.
It's upsetting because I was like, I do like staying in weird old places. They used to call the apartments upstairs the Ear Up, and it also had a little kitchen on site.
Oh, that's nice.
In the late 1970s or early 80s, depending on which report you read, they were able to make the actual name that stuck from the green door or the bar into the ear by doing kind of a shiesty move.
Okay.
So the sign that had hung outside that flashed bar since the 1930s or 40s, the New York Historical Society and the landmark area were being kind of reticent about letting them have a name change and putting signage over it. So instead of changing anything, they subtracted the two bubbles on the outside of the B to make the ear. So instead of bar, it says ear.
Oh, that's so funny.
It's so funny. It's the stoneriest thing I've ever heard in my entire life, but I am so down with it. You won't let us change the name? We're not really changing it. We're just doing something.
Yeah.
I thought it was outstanding. I was like, hell yeah.
Well, they were going to have their way.
I assume that they weren't like, ooh, you know what? The favorite thought process I have for what we should name the bar is the ear. But they were like, this is too much red tape. Let's get done with it. I'm not into it.
Yeah. Sassy little honey badgers.
Dude, they just did what they had to do, and it's awesome. It still exists as the ear. Cool town. John Lennon used to hang out here. Boy, oh boy. Allen Ginsberg would recite his word at random poetry meetings. It's said that they still have the poetry readings every once in a while, I guess.
Okay. Totally get into that.
Yeah, but they're about as well received as they were back in the 70s, 80s, where everyone was just kind of like, okay.
Oh, I'm such an artsy fartsy dork, though. I would be all about it.
After Hurricane Sandy, They said, quote, "We had a lot of water in here. The whole basement was flooded. We lost about $200,000 worth of equipment and all of the produce."
Yeah.
Knowing that the whole neighborhood was suffering, they had tried to take all the water out. They had a cousin with some sort of water pump and pumped it out of their basement. And when their basement was dry enough, they went down the block, basically pumping out all the other basements. They got a generator. I know.
Oh, that's so nice.
They got a generator to light up the sign because it's very dark there.
Yeah.
And they're like, at least they know that they can come to here. They're like, we had a line around the block of people trying to charge their phones. We were giving them free booze, and he had gone upstate and grabbed pizzas. And because their gas oven was still working, would reheat the pizzas and give that out to the people in the neighborhood.
Oh my God.
I know. Are you an angel?
That's really, really adorable.
It's so cute. A lot of buildings were torn down around it, and somehow it still survived, including a building that was next door that basically shared a wall with it that has become an 11-story high-rise that legit dwarfs this 3-story house.
That's weird.
The provision, because they wanted to make sure that it was preserved, was that the company that was building the high-rise and the office building was to also reinforce the walls and preserve as much of the historical character as possible. So when they went and started excavating in the basement, that's when they found all the hand-blown glass bottles that now are sitting behind the bar. So things that they excavated from the basement, besides giving them to the New York Historical Society, they also decided to put on display, obviously, outside of people's hands.
Yeah.
Just imagine looking at a super divey bar and then like looking at kind of the kitsch that's hanging up on the walls, and then looking around you and then being like, that looks super old, like from the 1800s old, because it is. Some of the beams in the upper areas still have axe marks and burns because there was a fire earlier in the time period, but all of them were from the same sort of period of time as when it was erected, which is the coolest. Also, some of the other pieces of wood that were used to finish the structure had come from other areas that had been burned down. Wouldn't it be cool if you could just like touch something? Like a hand-blown whiskey jug from Cloak's era. So 1830s. Are you fucking kidding me? Okay, sorry.
No, I mean, I'm into it.
In 2006 is when they were building that 11-story building. It is called the Urban Glass House because a famous architect, Philip Johnson, had intended to construct it, and it's based off of another house that he has, I think, in Connecticut, that's called the Glass House. Heyman had also found a 5-shot revolver made around 1900 that was tucked into the flue of the second-floor fireplace as they were, like, fixing everything.
That's so cool.
They have crack gauges all over the walls. When any sort of engineer comes in and checks the gauges, they just shake their head and walk out. Martin Sheridan, one of the owners, had said, quote, "It's not mine, it's all of ours. It's a place that has mattered to people in the neighborhood and beyond for many generations. I think it's a piece of living history where New York's past and present live together, ensuring the vibrancy of every moment and the future as well." So even in this area where it obviously developed from a shoreline where sailors are frequently at, and then also the brothels and then kind of really seedy areas and then like an artist town, and now it's basically a lot of like architecture firms and like office-y spaces. They're still thriving pretty hard because it's awesome, and the community is like really in support of them, so they also support the community. Supposedly there's some tunnels that are underneath, because we know I like tunnels. There's a story about them that says that they were there to haul ice in and out of the bar, and then at some point in time was possibly used as an escape route for runaway slaves, as well as to haul alcohol back and forth throughout Prohibition. One of their primary ghosts actually has a name, and they call him Mickey the Sailor. He was a longshoreman. He was a regular at the Ear before it actually had a name, and by some accounts, he was also a lodger in the rooms above the bar in the 20s. He was a chipper and flirtatious man with an exceptional thirst for whiskey. My kind of dude. There were even some reports that he had pled sometimes with the staff to stay open so he can get a drink after they had closed. Samesies, friend. Usually works. There are a few theories that encircle his death and obviously why he would be haunting this area. One of which was that he had come back from a long time on a boat and had given himself alcohol poisoning after an overzealous night. Another says that he had come down from his room, had drank too much, and...
Fell down the stairs?
No, he had died on a stool waiting for the clipper ship that he was supposed to be on. And then the very last and honestly most common that I found says that he had gotten shit-faced and tried to walk across the street to wherever his home was, and a car had hit him, and he had died in the street. Not sure which one's true, because he doesn't seem to be an actual person. There are a couple regulars that had no idea about this story, but it seems most people know about it.
Yeah.
Of his ghost, many think that he's just kind of bored, so he doesn't actually wail or make you see things that aren't there to scare you. He doesn't seem to intentionally drive patrons from the bar, but he is a trickster.
Well, which is funny.
Yeah. I'm down with a lot of things, but he's also in Ghost Me Too right now. Like, he's just, oh boy, oh boy.
Does he, like, move things and hide shit, or?
He does some things. According to one, quote, he's a sailor. Sailors are going to do what they are going to do. Patrons of the ear will report that sometimes they'll return to a table with a full drink only to find it empty when they go to drink it. The staff seems to think it's because they've imbibed a bit too much and have forgotten that they had drank what they drank. But they often will blame the ghost of Mickey for doing so. He makes crashing noises and causes mischief between patrons who think that their friends or the bartenders are playing tricks on them. So it'd be like me setting down a drink, you drinking the whole thing and being like, what? It wasn't me. Like, la-di-da. The owner, Martin Sheridan, had said, quote, it's not a tale, it's a fact. Although lately it's been people who notice a little bit too much of their drink missing. They look around and start accusing their friends. Servers, especially the females, have reported that they sometimes are poked or touched, and some even say that they've gotten goosed while walking. Most will state that they've literally felt cold hands on them.
I don't like that. I don't like the touching.
Martin, the owner, has been nudged by Mickey, but he takes it with a grain of salt, apparently telling him, quote, I'm busy, don't bother me. Which I think is outstanding. The nudging doesn't stop at goosing. Apparently those who have stayed in the upper floors that are now storage have felt a presence crawl into bed with them. Mostly female again, but some of the former residents have said that they had felt the presence while sleeping as well.
No. Yuck.
He's just a cuddle bug.
Never.
I was like, no, Mickey, no.
He's so drunk in the afterlife, he doesn't even realize that's not his bed.
The ghost activity might not specifically be associated with him. A psychic associated with the documentary crew from the BBC had reported that they felt 3 or 4 entities there, but all of them seemed friendly. People sitting at the bar, especially while the business is slow, have been nudged, and some have seen fuzzy shapes or shadows not associated with live people. Tourists will often sense a presence and ask to go upstairs, but the servers have often said that they don't want to go get storage because something scared them upstairs. And they think someone was in there. Families that had rented the space had said that they were woken up to violent bed shaking.
Oh, no thank you.
Yeah, no thank you. There's another theory, of course. There's another theory on some of the
Wait, do you think that the bed is shaking violently because it used to be a brothel?
Do you know what I've been thinking 99% of the time of this whole story? Legitimately, it's been me going, I mean, someone's fucking in that bed, though.
It's just a thought.
No, for sure. I'm in with you on that because I was like, muscle memory on that bed, though.
Oh, sorry.
Which brings me to the next point. A theory on some of the spirits in the ear is similar to Mickey's story. Sailors and seafaring passengers who had also imbibed too much and died. Others that had missed their boats, and even some of the sex workers that had worked in the bar while it was still operating as a brothel.
Well, look at that.
Look at that. There's sometimes the smell of coffee, spices, and tobacco from the earlier sea trade and former businesses. And in 2014, a server's boyfriend had spotted a ghost. They had stayed the night upstairs, and when his girlfriend had woke in the middle of the night, she had reported that her boyfriend was glassy-eyed and staring in the corner intently. She asked what he was looking at, and he replied, quote, I'm just saying hello to the strange man standing in the corner.
Fuck that. Fuck everything about that. No. When I am in my bedroom, that is my safe space. You don't get to stand over my bed. You don't get to stand in the corner. Stop watching me. There's a whole bar downstairs. Go entertain yourself.
Go entertain yourself. Most think that if it were Mickey, that he would have actually tried to join them in the bed. Who knows? One time a bartender that had worked there had said that a phone had rang. She answered, It is disconnected from any and all power and therefore cannot possibly ring. And there was no one on the other side of the line.
I kind of felt like you were going to say it wasn't connected.
Of course. The call's coming from inside the house.
Have you checked the children?
Martin Sheridan had said that he was happy to not have any additional investigators, albeit he does openly welcome anyone that has had an experience to talk about it. He's fine with the diagnosis of the psychic from the BBC and does not want to inspire more entities to frequent his establishment or to try to get a different reading. Literally the lesson. Quote, the spirits there